This video is sponsored by Cinematch, a color grading tool that makes it so much easier to match cameras. Get a free trial at the link in the description and stick around to find out how you can win a copy. What is up, people? My name is Dunna, and welcome to the first episode in a new series called Can Dunna Do It, where I take filmmaking and photography challenges from you, try my best to do it, and see what we learn along the way. In this episode, I've been challenged by Alan, who wrote, "Replicate the lighting and color grade from your favorite scene in the Netflix series The Queen's Gambit." When I first watched this show, it definitely stood out to me as visually stunning and beautifully lit and graded, so I'm super excited to take this one on and see what we can learn. So, secure the cup. Let's get into the challenge. Okay, first things first, we're gonna wanna do a bit of research and planning before we bust out any lights and cameras. A quick search tells us that this show was shot on RED cameras with Zeiss Supreme Prime lenses. Now, part of the challenge that we have here is that I don't have either of those things, but Cinematch is going to help us in the grading process by allowing me to change the look of my Sony a7S III footage to get that red look. More on that when we get to grading. And as for the lenses, I'll just be working with what I have. If you were to only look at the promotional material for the show, you might think that we need a strongly saturated look with intense contrast and punchy sharpness, but when you really dive into the show, you'll quickly see that there are a ton of different looks that all have a significant impact on the story. For example, the flashbacks to Beth's childhood scenes are super desaturated, really gray looking. The orphanage scenes are also pretty desaturated. Then there's this really cool switch that happens when Beth gets adopted. When you're outside the house, it's still desaturated in gray, kind of this uneasy feeling, but once they move inside and she starts to see the house and looks at her room, we get a lot more color, a lot more depth to the shots. And then much later on in the final tournament of the show, it gets really dark and contrasty. One of the cool things that I read about this is that they didn't actually bring any lights to light this scene, they just used what was in the actual environment. So I love that they've done so much with the color and the look of this show, but there's one scene that really stood out to me, and it's when Beth plays Towns in her first tournament. We've got this beautifully backlit shot of the two of them playing their match, and it's just got this beautiful soft quality to it while still having a decent amount of contrast. One of the first things that I want to do when I'm analyzing this scene is figure out what the motivation is for the light. Where is the light coming from? If we skip towards the end of the scene, there's a shot where Towns is standing up, and you can see that there are these windows up above where the action is taking place, and that's kind of our main source of light for the scene. If I had to guess, it looks like they've got a light in each window. You can see a kind of hot spot in the middle of each of them, so they're using the windows to diffuse. Whatever this material is on the window, that's how they're diffusing that light coming in. And this specific shot really shows off the diffusion that we have going on as well. We've got this big hazy kind of look, and this is nicely motivated by the fact that there's smoke in the background. The people just behind them were smoking while they were playing their match, these guys here. And so the whole room kind of feels like it's filling up with this cigarette smoke and gives it this nice kind of glowing, hazy look. So if we take a look at our wide shot here, we can see that our characters have this beautiful glow around them from being backlit like that. And there are windows that span the entirety of this shot, so you've got a nice wrap around the back as well. But considering that the main source of light is coming from the other side of our characters, there is a decent amount of what I assume is a bounce fill coming in from this side so that we can still see the shadow sides of our characters' faces. When we get to the singles of our main character, you can see that it looks like they've softened it up quite a bit, especially noticeable on the shadow side of the cheek here. If we go back to our wide shot, you can see these specular highlights on the cheek, especially here on Towns, whereas in his shot here, it's nice and soft on that cheek. Now, some of this will change a little bit depending on the way that their faces are angled, but this is kind of what I noticed throughout the scene. To me, this suggests that we've got one lighting setup for the wide shot, and then we've got another more flattering setup for the singles. And this is a pretty common thing to do, so that would totally make sense. The other thing that supports this theory is that if you look at the eyes in the singles, we've got this circular catch light, which suggests that they've got another light other than just those big window lights up behind them. This is definitely something something that we're gonna wanna try and get. A nice catch light in an eye can definitely give life to that character's eyes. And taking a look at depth of field, starting with the wide shot, we're not too shallow here. You can definitely still see some texture and stuff going on in the background. We've got faces, but not too much detail. And then these guys in the game behind them are just a little bit more clear. So the depth of field isn't razor thin, but for a wider shot like this, it might still be a T2.8 or maybe a T4. And then as we push into the medium close-up, we've definitely got a blurrier background going on there, so probably a little bit more shallow. And then as we push into the close-up, we've basically got nothing but bokeh behind her. So I think what I'm gonna shoot for here for the wide shot, I'm gonna shoot with my 16-35 G Master, probably closer to the 35 end. I don't need to get super wide or anything. And I'm gonna start it at an f2.8, but see how that's feeling. For the medium close-up and for the close-up, I'm going to use my Sony Zeiss 55mm f1.8, so I can get a little bit more shallow depth of field, and so I can get just a tiny bit more compression. To try and emulate a little bit of that hazy look, instead of smoking, we're gonna have a little bit of insets going in the scene. And I'm also going to use the Polar Pro Mist variable ND filters so that I can add a little bit of diffusion right in front of the lens. We can get a little bit of that softness coming from the lights. Now, one thing that should be mentioned is that costumes, set design, all of those kinds of things play a huge factor in the look of something like this. All the colors that they chose in the scene are meant to work with the look of the film. And obviously I'm gonna be a little bit limited by the space and what I have laying around that I can use for props. For example, we're gonna be shooting in my living room and all of the walls are white, whereas if we look at this wide angle shot, we've got a lot of dark back here. And so getting the exact look is going to be difficult, but we're gonna try and at least kind of capture the aura of what we've got going on here. I think we've got a good plan to start with. It's gonna take some playing with, but let's go get the wide shot set up and I'll let you know what I did in the end. All right, so first things first, I had to kind of set up the whole area. So I got the desk moved over, I got the chessboard put down on it, and then I wanted to make sure that there was a little bit of depth to the shot, so there's some space behind. Once I got my assistant out of the way, we were pretty much set up on that front. I did try some things with the 300D and a softbox, and then I also tried some things with a reflector, but I didn't like those. There was a little bit of experimenting going on, and this is what we ended up with. Keeping in mind, this isn't the final grade, this is just a conversion to Rec 709, and here's how we got that shot. I've got a big sheet of diffusion on C-stand there, just with a couple of clamps. Behind that, I've got the Aperture 300D, and that's just kind of filling in the shadow side of the face a little bit, but still from the same direction so that it looks natural. Up behind, I've got the Aperture 200D with Fresnel at 40 degrees, and that is what's giving us the nice kind of glow around. It's kind of enhancing the light that we're getting out of the window. On the window, I put more of this diffusion material just kind of up behind the blinds there. And then just to give a little bit of kick of light on the back there, I've got the Nanlite Pavotube 30C, and that just gives a little bit of a rim light around the back there. I didn't end up using the reflector, and so now we're going in for the close-ups. So for the medium close-up and the close-up, basically all I did was moved over my diffusion and kind of spread it out a little bit more, and I've got both the 300D and the 200D going right at it. The 200D's got a little bit more of a specific highlight, and I think that's how we're getting our nice catch lights in our eyes. Right there. I just kept the Nanlite Pavotube just kind of up over the shoulder there, again, to just give us a little bit of separation from the background. Luckily, we've got these windows behind us as well, so they give a little bit of that as well. And then, of course, there's mess everywhere that you can't see in the shot. And I switched over to the Zeiss 55mm f1.8 for the medium close-up and the close-up. And all I did was moved in the tripod a little bit when it was time to get the shot. And we got the shot. Okay, so we have our shots now, which takes care of the first portion of the challenge, which was lighting. But that brings us to the next portion, which is the part that I'm the most nervous for, which is color grading. I have a little confession to make. I've already tried this about 3 times, and I've never been quite happy with it. There are definitely some differences between what's going on in the original to what's going on in ours. So the goal is more to try and kind of match the mood, almost like you could cut between the two. And so far, I'm finding it very difficult. So I'm gonna take one more crack at this, and we're gonna start by using Cinematch to get our Sony footage to look a little more like Red footage. So hopping over into the color panel here, you can see that I've got some still frames from the show on this side so I can do comparisons. And then I've got my 3 shots here. So I've got my wide, my medium close-up, and then my close-up. One of the things that I wanted to check in our reference shots was the extents that they went to. So for example, in this shot where we can see the windows there, they're right up to the white point. So they're not using a lowered white point or anything like that. And then generally all of the shots down here are 63 line, that would be 100% black in video levels, and they're never quite getting all the way down to it, or at least the darkest parts are usually not quite touching it. So we're just gonna keep that in mind when we do our shots. Now, one of the first things that I noticed when I pulled in the wide shot is that it had a little bit of noise on it, especially over in the dark areas here. So the first node is going to be a noise reduction node. For now, I'm going to disable that because it is a hog on the computer. Here's my favorite part of the whole process. We're gonna go into Open Effects, we're gonna go down to Cinematch, and we're gonna drag it onto a node. Now, they've made this so easy for you. So we're gonna choose Camera Source Profile, we're gonna select Sony, we're gonna select A7S3, I'm gonna go down to S-Log3, S-Gambit 3 Cine, because that's what I was shooting. I'm gonna hit apply. And now if I wanted to just apply a Rec 709 transform, you just hit the button and it does it. We're gonna try and match a Red camera. So what I'm gonna do is go into my target profile. I'm gonna go select Red. I'm gonna choose the helium, and I'm gonna choose Dragon Color 2 Red Log Film, and then hit apply. And you see how it's slightly changed. So now we're starting from a place that's much more similar to the way that they would have shot it. And you can choose all sorts of different cameras in here. So we've got Arri Alexa, we've got Blackmagic, we've got Canon, you've got even stuff if you have a GoPro and you want to try and match that to your Sony camera or Zcam or whatever, you've got them all in here. Now we can hit that Rec 709 transform and things are looking reasonably good. But that's really just the tip of the iceberg for what Cinematch can do. You've also got an exposure slider here, so if you underexposed or overexposed, you can actually change the exposure going into the transform. They've got these helpful tools like false color, so you can pick your middle gray, and it shows you where middle gray is using the green. And my favorite is using the false color exposure for skin tones. So I really like when you can start to see the orange tickling on the skin tones. I find that's usually a really good place to start. Then below that, we've got our white balance, so we can get that all set up. And they've even got a false color temperature assist. So anything that should be a neutral color in your picture should still stay neutral. As soon as you start to push it too far one way or the other, it'll get blue or orange. And then we've got the same thing for tint too. So we've got between green and magenta. What I really like to do is just grab the white balance picker and click on something that's white. And now we have our white balance. In our window here, there's actually an overlay. If you're not seeing this, you go down to your Open Effects overlay here, and you've got even more options. So you've got full HSL curves in here. You've got RGB curves. So I could go in and start adding contrast and all that kind of stuff right on this same node. We've got color wheels, so we could actually go ahead and push some colors into different portions of our image, shadows, midtones, and highlight sliders, and then we've got saturation as well. You could actually do your entire grade in Cinematch if you wanted to. In this case, we're just going to use it for our Rec 709 transform and to get us over into that red look, but it's such a powerful tool. And like I said earlier, there's a link down in the description that will get you a free trial of it. And here's what you're going to do if you want to win a copy. All you have to do is head down to the comment section, leave a comment with the word Cinematch in it, and tell me what you would have done different to light or grade these shots. I'll pick one lucky winner from the comment section who's going to get a free copy of Cinematch, which is currently available for DaVinci Resolve, Premiere Pro, and they're working on the version for Final Cut Pro. Huge thank you to Cinematch for sponsoring this video. Let's get back into the grade. So in my previous attempts, what I found is that I was trying to get too complicated with it and it was just making it worse than it was making it better. So we're gonna try and keep it simple this time. After the Cinematch transform that we did, we're gonna go contrast, color, and a look. And hopefully that should get us close to our reference. Part of the problem here is that we've got a bright window on one side, whereas there's nothing like that in the other shot. So if we were to look at the shot that does have a window in it, you can see that there's lots of stuff clipping up in the top here. Other than that, our waveform looks reasonably similar. So that's looking pretty good. Okay, so let's leave contrast for a second and move over to color. I can see that we're a lot more yellowy orange. They've got a lot more pink, especially like in her skin tone. It's kind of like this pink. And then the things that look like they should be kind of white have kind of a bit of a teal or a green to them. This right here, I feel like could come down a little bit. Let's go back to our contrast. I'm gonna use my curves here, and I'm just on my luminance curve. Surprisingly enough, I feel like I've made it worse with my color node. I shouldn't say worse, but further away from what we were looking for. Let's actually reset that. One of the things that I found really difficult about this is trying to separate the skin tone from the hair tone, because it's super important that we have the bright colored hair. That's kind of a big part of the show, but in this shot, the skin and hair color are so similar. I'm gonna desaturate the whole thing just a little bit. Then I'm also going to go into my luminance versus saturation, pick my shadows, and clean the colors out of the shadows a little bit. I'm also going to push just a little bit of pink into the lift, kind of a greeny yellow to the gain. I feel like our backgrounds here are kind of white, matches pretty darn closely. Mine is a little bit brighter than theirs. Just gonna desaturate the skin tones a little bit because they're really not super strong in our reference. The other thing too is you can see she's got like a navy blue dress on. We've got also a navy blue dress here, but hers has a lot more kind of teal in it, whereas ours is like a more purpley blue. Let's fix that in the colors. Go hue versus hue. Make that a little bit more blue. I think our color is about right now, and then what we can do is go in and just desaturate it a little bit so that it matches better. And I do actually think that we're getting close now. I still feel like their whites are a little warmer almost. There's like a more yellowy kind of tone to them. I wasn't gonna do this, but let's add a layer here. I'm gonna grab a qualifier here. Other layer, I want to add that kind of greeny tone in there. I think this is getting pretty close though. Look at our skin tones and then their skin tones. This color comparatively to that color. I've got that little specular highlight just on the cheek there. Okay, and the final piece of the puzzle here is that I'm going to add a little bit of film grain using film convert nitrate. And then I want to get rid of the film chroma and luma. Just want the grain. It's ever so subtle, but it definitely helps. Now we can see ours. next to the original. And it's looking pretty good. Now we just have to figure out a way to apply that to the others. Now the trick here is that I used a different lens, so we're definitely not going to be able to just copy paste, but that is how I'm going to start things out. So I'm going to grab both of these and I'm just going to apply that grade over. And as you can see, it does not work. So basically at this point, I repeated the grading process that you saw in the wide shot for the medium close-up and the close-up, starting with using Cinematch again to get the red look, and also by using false color tools on the reference as well to get my levels in the right ballpark to start. I did my best to match the contrast and colors of the scene while still keeping in mind that the actual set itself had a very different look and very different colors in it. Once I got the medium close-up, because all I did was pushed in the camera for the close-up, luckily it was as easy as copying over the settings, and then we were pretty much good. So there we have it. I took on Alan's challenge and I tried to light and color grade like the Queen's Gambit, and I'm reasonably happy with what we got in the end. But what did we learn from this experience? Well, first of all, this really doubled down on the idea that set design, characters, location, all of those kinds of things make a huge difference in your scene. Lighting and color grading will only really get you so far. If I could do this again, I might focus on those things a little bit more to make my life a little bit easier later on. That being said, with a little bit of planning ahead, analyzing the footage, and making some of those decisions ahead of time, I think we got something pretty great. And personally, I learned a lot in the process of that analysis. I would have liked to have gotten a little bit more of a glow around the character, maybe a little bit more light coming from the far side, and I never quite got the color in the skin tones the way that I felt like it should be, but that just means that there's more practice and more learning that needs to be done. I'm sure that in 2 weeks I'll have some kind of new color grading or lighting trick that will make me want to do this whole thing again, but that's just the way these things go. I was definitely really thankful for the camera matching capabilities in Cinematch because it got us just that little step closer than we would have been otherwise, as well as all the other awesome tools that just make my life so much easier. And in fact, while I've been working on this video, they actually put out an update that allows you to export LUTs. So for example, I could have created an S-Log32 red LUT and put that on my monitor to make things even easier during the shooting process. And again, head down to the description, there's a link for a free trial down there, and if you leave a comment with the word Cinematch somewhere in it, I'm going to be giving away a free copy in the next week. If you want to submit a challenge for the Can Dunna Do It series, head to dunnadidit.com/challenge and let me know what you want to see. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell notification so you don't miss out on future reviews, tutorials, and challenges. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks to Cinematch for sponsoring, and I'll see you next time.